Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my AP Top 25, my personal AP Top 25 as requested. And quite frankly, this Top 25, this shit is ass. Okay, I've been looking at it. I've had some real big question marks around a lot of things. There's a lot of shit that doesn't make sense that we'll get into. But before we do that, a like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps. And let's get straight into this thing. So I'm just doing it simply left to right. So I got Ohio State being number one actually over Texas, just because I mean Texas does have the better opponent played, but for me it's more of the fact that their big win is against Michigan, and like Michigan is ass. Like, let's be real, Michigan's ass. They struggled. I wouldn't say struggled necessarily because they did, beat them pretty good. But it took a long time for them to beat Mississippi State. I'm talking about Texas right now. Whereas Ohio State has seemingly dominated everybody. The highest they have allowed anybody to score is 14. That's it. And they've been playing conference play against, Michigan State and Iowa. But still, I think both of these teams are fairly even. I just think I like Ohio State more. I've watched a little bit of Texas, and I'm just not sure. I don't know when Quinn Ewers is back, if he'll even play, or if it's going to be Arch Manning from this point forward. I'm not really sure, but they're going to play Oklahoma. They're probably going to win that by a lot. And Texas will probably sit at this number one spot until 10-19. Then we'll really know what Texas is about. And Ohio State this week actually has to play Oregon. So it's going to be up to whether Ohio State can beat Oregon in Oregon's home stadium. And I do think Ohio State is actually capable of taking down Oregon, who's right here at number 3. I do think Ohio State is capable of taking down Oregon on the road. But I also am kind of I'm kind of skeptical because, Oregon is also really, really good. It's more of it is Dylan Gabriel. Hasn't had many interceptions, but he definitely showed some inconsistency against Michigan State and made some mistakes. It looks like the rest of the team has finally started to put their shit together and get things done, but Dylan Gabriel was still making some mistakes. So if he can, patch up those mistakes from against Michigan State, this team's golden. It should be a great matchup between the two, very balanced. I don't know if it'll be more defensive or offensive. I can't really imagine it'd be more defensive, if anything. I'm expecting an offensive matchup, to be honest. I could be wrong, though. But one thing I do know is that Oregon seems to have a pretty good special teams also. So that could be a major factor in that Ohio State game. But I don't know. I think Ohio State's number one right now, but these top 3 are definitely, the top 3 right now. No doubt about it. So here's where I get some switch-ups and changes. At number 4, it just doesn't feel right to have Penn State at number 4, They hit the road and beat West Virginia, but, okay. It was a massive weather delay. There was a ginormous push-off right before halftime that I will never get over. Ginormous push-off that didn't get called that allowed them to score a touchdown. I'll never get over that. They also only beat Bowling Green by 7 points in Penn State's home stadium. They beat Illinois 7-21, but, Illinois sits at the bottom of the top 25. You're number 4, and you're only beating them by 14. And then they beat UCLA 11-27. That's not something you just look at and say, oh, yeah, that's number 4 worthy. Alabama, of course, just lost to Vanderbilt. And everybody instantly, even the AP just drops them from 1-7 like they didn't just beat Georgia. I think to have Alabama under Georgia right now is actually just disgraceful. Nah, not disgraceful, but just a little stupid. Just doesn't really make sense. I don't care who Alabama lost to. Alabama beat Georgia, fair and frickin' square. Why are we having them below Georgia? No, they're not below Georgia. Vanderbilt, again, I explained it in my review video I posted a couple hours ago. Alabama owned Vanderbilt owned the time of possession game. If Alabama can fix up their mistakes, they're a pick 6 away from winning this game. Like, they're literally a pick six away from winning this game. If Jalen Milroe didn't throw that pick six, they still could have won this game while only possessing the ball for 18 minutes. They scored 35 points in 18 minutes of football to Vanderbilt's 40 in 42 minutes. They possessed the ball longer for more than points they scored, 42-40. I'm just saying, Alabama, Ryan Williams, Jalen Milroe, they are a very, very good bunch. Even the running back over there is very solid. It is still a very good team. Do not sleep on Alabama just because of this amazing upset. I mean, just completely ridiculous upset. And then Georgia. I mean, Georgia should stay at number 5. They had a domination in week 1 against Clemson. Barely snuck out a win against Kentucky on the road. But that's pretty impressive to me, at least, considering Kentucky was able to go on the road and beat Ole Miss. To go into their home stadium and win that is actually a pretty good look for Kentucky, in my opinion. But, they lost to Alabama. So until, Georgia proves themselves with a big win, I think this is where they are going to remain, is around this 5, maybe 4 spot, depending on who above them drops below. But I think this is a good spot for Georgia. They've got a pretty new team, but still they're one of the top dogs. Carson Beck is a pretty good quarterback. And obviously, they were down big time in that Alabama game, but they showed Miami strength, and they almost climbed all the way back in that thing. It was Ryan Williams, single-handedly torching a defense to basically win the game against Georgia. It literally took all that. Georgia is still a top dog right now. They're still very good. It's just the team they lost to is better. That's it. The team they lost to. Now, all right, so I said Ohio State is the number 1 team earlier. It's still Alabama, in my opinion. I'm just not going to be able to put them up there until other teams start taking losses, all right? Alabama is still my number 1 team in terms of, if record didn't matter. But since they lost, you can't really do that. Miami, Tennessee, Ole Miss. Miami obviously barely beat Cal by a point, and barely shouldn't even have beaten Virginia Tech the week before. But the reason I've got this team so highly ranked still and not dropping down, even though, close games kind of make you question a football team, is the fact that they have one of the most disciplined and calm quarterbacks back there in the pocket that is literally a freaking weapon. I mean, you also got Damian Martinez, who is a very solid running back. You've got Xavier Restrepo, he's going to be a first-round wide receiver. He is a dog. The offense is absolutely loaded. Now, the Miami defense is where it looks like it lacks a little bit, but they have proven multiple times that their offense is able to make up for it. I mean, Virginia Tech, they should have lost that game. Dude caught that Hail Mary. It was a little bit wobbly and stuff, but call in the field was a touchdown. To reverse it is crazy. But Miami still takes the W there. But to come back from a 25-point deficit at Cal and win 39-38 is just a prime time display of discipline and skill. Even though Cal might not be the best team ever, most people will get demoralized. Miami stands tall, and they win. That's what they do. That's why I've got them over Tennessee. Obviously, Tennessee just lost. I do like this Tennessee team, and I like their quarterback, but their quarterback definitely showed why he's a freshman against Arkansas. But I'm not going to dock them many points for losing to Arkansas because I do think Arkansas is top 25 worthy. Spoiler alert. I think they are top 25 worthy, and it's time people stop glossing over Arkansas. And Ole Miss, losing to Kentucky last week, bounces back with a absolute shutdown win against South Carolina, the very South Carolina team that almost took down LSU, and barely lost off of a missed field goal. Could have gone into overtime. Who knows what would have happened in there? Probably would have lasted forever because both teams are just offense. And Ole Miss managed to absolutely shut down South Carolina for pretty much the whole game. Held them very, very little score. South Carolina missed a field goal, so it could have been a bit more. But seriously, holding them that scoreless is very impressive. Ole Miss is solid. And here's the big one. I've got at number 10. All right, so I'm going to 3, obviously. So right now we're at number 10, and we go left to right. BYU is at number 10 for me. So in the normal AP poll, this is where I say the AP poll sucks ass. Top 9 is like, all right, respectable, other than, I guess, Alabama being under Georgia type shit. But then right when you get to number 10, you get Clemson. 5 spots away from Clemson is Georgia. How bad did Georgia beat Clemson? 34-3. Now, obviously, I've been one to say it's the season opener. Teams have made changes, but what changes has Clemson really made that's going to be good enough to take down Georgia? Either Georgia should be way higher or Clemson should be way lower. And I chose Clemson way lower because I still think there's teams better than Georgia. So I've got Clemson a bit down, and I've got BYU absolutely rising in the rankings because, well, first off, they've handled most of their competition. They had a huge road win, second game of the year, that is going to be looked back on as insanity for both teams being unranked. They won by 3 points on the road at SMU. BYU versus SMU. That was a huge win. They didn't even know it at the time. And then, obviously, the big game in week 4, they absolutely swashbuckled Kansas State. Like, absolutely pounded them. And in the sense of, Kansas State couldn't stop turning the ball over, holding them 0 for 3 on fourth down efficiency, to me, sounds like defense. And causing 3 turnovers, that sounds like defense. That doesn't sound like just stupid mistakes. It sounds like Kansas State can't get anything working offensively. They're overwhelmed. They did have a bit of a scary game against Baylor, I will say, but they were also up 28-7, even up 31-14. The game was kind of over. It was just Baylor trying to make some fairy tale comeback, which didn't end up happening. I think BYU now, they get to host Arizona, host Oklahoma State, at UCF, at Utah, host Kansas, at ASU, host BYU. Literally looking at this schedule, they have the opportunity to either go 1-loss or undefeated. Now, if Utah doesn't get Cam Rising back by that game, they probably stand a very solid chance to go undefeated, with their hard games pretty much being their road games. But if Cam Rising's back, I don't think BYU's got that. But that's matching up to be the damn holy war, isn't it? 14 versus 16 right now. That's pretty cool. And then I've got Notre Dame. With Texas A&M rising all the way up to literally right behind Notre Dame, Notre Dame has to get some glory here. Of course, Notre Dame is going to be put down for infinity and beyond. They're going to get put down for that loss against NIU. They're always going to get put down for that. But if Riley Leonard didn't make that hideous mistake, they would have won a scary close game. That's simply it. He threw a terrible pick 6 towards the end of the game. And ultimately, upsets like this typically happen at Notre Dame. But everybody wants to hold that against Notre Dame. They want to look at the bad, but they don't ever want to look at the good. And right now, the Texas A&M quarterback just thrashed Missouri. Absolutely thrashed them. Made them look silly. In week 1, Notre Dame versus Texas A&M, Notre Dame went on the road, and their defense performed so well. They held the same quarterback that dropped 41 on Missouri. They held him 12 for 30, 100 yards, and 2 interceptions. That is insane work by a defense. And I think that's where Notre Dame's strength is. Now, they probably should have lost to Louisville, considering Louisville gave them infinite possible turnovers, and they still only won by 7. But, maybe time will tell that Louisville's a better team than we think they are, type of deal. But they still walk away with the win there. They're up to number 11 now, and they also have a schedule. They also have a good schedule to go at least a 1-loss team. Now, they do have to hit the road and play Georgia Tech. They have to hit the road and play Navy, and they have to play Army, and even at USC could still be a little scary, but Navy and Army right now are both undefeated and actually both looking like very solid teams right now. So it's probably going to be I guess they are already a 1-loss team, but it could be a 2-loss team for Notre Dame. But also Notre Dame is kind of leagues ahead of Group of 5 teams, so you never know. And then A&M, obviously, I've got them skyrocketing up because they just made Missouri look like light work, and I think they've patched up some mistakes. Their defense is very solid, and their quarterback looks much more calm and compact than he did in week 1. I think they've, fixed things up, and I like the head coach for Texas A&M. I like him. He's a pretty cool guy. I think he's going to do great things there, and he's starting right away with A&M. Clemson, Iowa State, Boise State. So the reason I don't got Iowa State up at number 11, and I kind of switched BYU and Iowa State a little bit, is because when you look at Iowa State, their only ranked win right now is against Iowa, and Iowa just got destroyed by Ohio State. And, I mean, yes, Iowa was at home against Iowa State, so it makes it maybe a bit more difficult. But still, to only win by 1 point, now you're up to number 11 in the AP poll. With Ohio State being ranked at number 2, there's a whole total of 9 spots there. But, one team absolutely manhandled one team, and then one team barely beat that same team by 1 point, if that makes any sense to you guys. I'm just saying Iowa State is still yet to play anybody. They have to go on the road and play West Virginia. That actually looks like it could be a pretty scary game, not going to lie. West Virginia, since losing to Penn State and Pitt, like I said a long time ago, I wasn't counting Kansas or West Virginia out yet. They hadn't lost any conference games at that point. Now, of course, they had to play each other right at the start. So once West Virginia won that, I lost faith in Kansas, and then Kansas just lost to ASU. So their season's not looking too good. But West Virginia is now advancing to 2-0 in conference play with a win over Kansas and a domination over Oklahoma State on the road. West Virginia gets to host Iowa State. This is a major chance at redemption and a potential to make yourself known in the Big 12 Conference, because then after that, they get to host Kansas State. And after that, you got a hard game against Arizona and a hard game against Cincinnati before returning 2 home games and then finish off with a difficult Texas Tech team as well. I'm just saying, West Virginia could very well give a nice wake-up call to Iowa State this week. They literally could. And they could easily tank Iowa State out of the rankings, or not out of the rankings, but way down in the rankings just as they get up to number 11. I just think we're putting way too much faith into Iowa State right now to say with our chest pumped that they are number 11. That's just too silly. Oops, I did not mean to click there. Well, oopsies, accidentally exposed that. Hopefully you didn't see. Just pretend you didn't see anything. We'll talk about Clemson now. The reason I got Clemson down here is because they got absolutely destroyed by Georgia. And even though you can make changes and things can flip around, you can work on your weak points, I can't say that they can be 5 spots away from Georgia. I just can't say that. They got defensively shut down by Georgia. Clemson's defense held for as long as they could, they held very, very well. That game was 6-0 going into halftime, Clemson just needed anything offensively, and they just didn't have it. They just didn't have it whatsoever. And I don't know if Cade Klubnik is going to be the quarterback to be able to put Clemson in a top 10 spot. I don't know if I have that much faith in him. I think this Clemson team, now, looking at teams like Pitt and SMU and Louisville, how they are, and even Virginia Tech, Clemson does control their destiny to get into the ACC championship, but, I don't know, it's still sketchy. It's still, I don't know if Clemson's able to do it. So I'm just not really fully faithful in them. And Boise State, I've got them rising. I think we're at, number 15 right now. I don't know. Hopefully you guys have been counting, because I haven't, even though it's my top 25. But I believe Boise State sits at number 15 right now. And that they're just dominating. They've got a running back who is putting up insane video game-like numbers. And the rest of the schedule is pretty easy up until that UNLV game. Other than the UNLV game, it is a free schedule to a one-loss team and probably group of 5 presence in the playoffs. Boise State is very, very solid. And, of course, their only loss is a 3-point loss to Oregon. So are you really going to say, oh, well, that loss means that, like, so much? Well, it's a 3-point loss to number 3 in the country. Give Boise State some credit. Indiana, Utah, Pitt. So now we're on to 18. Pitt is 18. Utah 17, Indiana 16. So I've got Indiana rising a little bit, just a spot over Utah. And I've got Pitt rising a lot. I'm just like, yes, I think Indiana's offense is really good. Although, again, another game where it's like this weekend, they could very well lose. Oh, I guess it's not this weekend, it's next weekend. So they actually get a bye week before this upcoming game. But they have to play Nebraska. Oh, both teams get a bye week, though. Damn, that's actually insane timing. But they play against each other in a week after this Saturday. And it's going to be offense versus defense, like I said. And Indiana's offense so far has put up like 40-plus points except for their first game of the year. They've put up 40-plus points except for the first game of the year. And in the first game of the year, they still put up 31. They put up 31 points. I mean, like, their offense is destroying. Nebraska's defense held Colorado to minimal points, and they also held Rutgers to minimal points, as well as, I mean, Illinois. It's hard to hold Illinois sub 30 when the game goes into overtime like that, but that game was definitely a defensive game. Utah, this is always going to be the problem with Utah for the rest of it's like Cam Rising's going to be 50 and he's going to be like throwing absolute dimes and then he's going to get hurt and we're going to be like, is he going to come back? Like, we're going to do this for the rest of our damn lives. Utah is definitely a solid team with Cam Rising. Without Cam Rising, they are ass. So I moved them down a spot, but I don't want to move them way down because, the moment I do that, Cam Rising will awaken and start to just dominate again. But with Cam Rising, I think Utah's a top 10 team. Maybe even pushing top 5. I'm not even kidding. They are going to be so solid with Cam Rising. But with this Isaac Wilson guy, there's just the offense isn't there. They cannot perform. Pitt, their quarterback is turning out to be quite a sensation down there, and they are managing to pull off road wins. I mean, Cincinnati road win doesn't look like insanely impressive, but Cincinnati's definitely underrated to say the least right now. Their 2 losses is a 1-point loss to Pitt, who's now in the top 25, and a 3-point road loss to Texas Tech with a final score 41-44. Cincinnati is a very good team. They are very underrated, to say the least. They get to play at UCF. UCF is favored. I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati wins that. Cincinnati has the opportunity to turn their schedule around, although they have a lot of very rude road games. So, yeah, I mean, Pitt's wins are pretty respectable. I mean, the North Carolina win, even though it was a close game, they still win by 10 points. That's pretty nice. They beat West Virginia, of course. I think Pitt deserves to get recognized for at least going undefeated for this long after how bad their season was last year. Kansas State, LSU, and SMU. I am not a big fan of LSU. Sorry, LSU fans out there. I'm not a big fan of this team whatsoever. LSU's only loss so far is to USC, which you don't see them even in the normal AP Top 25. You won't see them in mine either. And that's your only loss. You also barely snuck out a 3-point win against South Carolina, which could have gone to overtime if the kicker didn't blow it. And since then, you haven't really played anybody. They're about to get a huge wake-up call against Ole Miss. Like, an absolutely huge wake-up call, and I don't know how far they'll fall in the rankings or if they'll just get kicked out entirely. They probably should get kicked out entirely if they get killed by Ole Miss. But if they play a close game, then maybe I was a bit wrong. But Kansas State, on the other hand, they're questionable for me. Their loss to BYU, obviously you get a lot to learn from a game like that, but they also have a domination against U of A, and they have a domination against Oklahoma State, Kansas State has dominated Oklahoma State, it seems. They have to play at Colorado, which is a super scary game. And then after that, they play at West Virginia. So Kansas State, definitely a questionable team right now. I don't know what to think about them. So I'll just kind of keep them in the bubble. Let's say that. I'll keep them in the bubble. SMU's 21, so this is 20, this is 19. They're rising up a mere spot, not even because I put them up a spot. It's because I dropped the team way down. And there they are as we speak about them. So first off, Illinois. Illinois sits at number 22, for me at least. Their only loss is a road loss to Penn State. They went on the road and beat the Cornhuskers, which was an impressive win, and they also beat Kansas. I mean, Kansas is now 1-5, but it's a Kansas team that has talent. They're just absolute internal failure right now. The Kansas situation has to be studied for eons, because they do have talent at Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal. They have talent in their cornerbacks. They're going to have a lot of draft picks there. They have a super solid team. The Kansas situation is they keep losing heartbreakers. That's what keeps on going on. They lost their first game of the year in a close one to Illinois by 6 points. They lost their second game of the year in another close one against UNLV. They lost their third game in a 4-point loss on the road against West Virginia in a heartbreaking comeback. And then they lost to TCU, in which TCU pulled away in the fourth quarter with a field goal to seal the deal. And then they lost to Arizona State by 4 points, in which Arizona State had to score 21 points in the fourth quarter to come back and beat Kansas. If that's not 4 heartbreakers, I don't know what is. Or if that's not, 5 heartbreakers, then I don't know what is. They're now 1-5, and they're probably the best 1-5 team in the country. And then, of course, Illinois, obviously, like I said, beat Nebraska on the road, which was a huge win. And they actually held Penn State fairly well. They held them fairly well throughout the game. Their offense wasn't able to do much, but Penn State definitely has a very solid defense, if anything. And final score is 21-7. If you expected Illinois to go into Penn State when it was pretty much entering nighttime, 109,000 fans, actually pretty much 110,000 fans showed up to this football game. If you thought Illinois was going to walk in here and beat them like 28-21, you were wrong. But that's not even Illinois' fault. Penn State is just a pretty good team, it seems. I would say breaking top 5-ish. Maybe not quite inside the top 5, but I don't remember where I put Penn State, but I think I would have them probably like right outside of the top 5, like right outside looking in. So you can't blame Illinois for losing a game like that, especially if it's a road game. Arkansas, the fact that Arkansas is not ranked in the AP poll, but Michigan is criminal. Arkansas, the same team that lost by 4 points to Texas A&M and lost in double overtime on the road at Oklahoma State. They lost by 4 points to Texas A&M. How bad did Missouri lose to Texas A&M? 31 points? Oh, let's have Missouri in the top 25, but not Arkansas. Oh, makes sense. Oh, wait, and Arkansas beat Tennessee? Yeah, let's keep Missouri and Michigan in the top 25 and keep Arkansas out. Makes sense. Even though both Michigan and Arkansas are 4-2, let's keep Arkansas out of the top 25. Makes sense. We've got a lot of shitters up in the AP poll, it seems like. And Oklahoma, they have a solid defense. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But seriously, they barely beat Auburn, and Auburn is 2-4. I mean, they barely beat Auburn on the road. Auburn lost 31-13 to Georgia. They lost by 10 points to Arkansas. They lost to Cal. Auburn's 2-4. They obviously have a better defense, but seriously, they can't win a damn game. And Oklahoma literally had to pull out a 63-yard pick six. Of course, Peyton Thorne would find a way to manage. They had to absolutely pull this one out of their ass in the fourth quarter to beat Auburn. And they also lost by 10 points to Tennessee, which, if anything, anything that was standing for Oklahoma is their defense. But they also scored a touchdown and failed a 2-point conversion with 1 minute and 1 second left. So they were putting on fart time points. And other than that, Oklahoma hasn't really done shit. They're going to play Texas. They're going to get exposed. They're going to get knocked out of the top 25. Simple. And then we have number 25. I just didn't even change the background picture because I'm lazy. We've got number 25 and then two teams that I believe are looking in right now. We've got Nebraska sitting at number 25. I do think Nebraska is still a solid team. I don't remember who they lost to this week. I don't think they even lost to anybody this week. Oh, they lost to Illinois, which completely knocked them out of the top 25. They bounced back, beat Purdue. Then they beat Rutgers, which is an impressive win, and they're somehow still not in the top 25, even though they're 5-1. And Rutgers was an undefeated team with a road win against Virginia Tech, the same team that almost beat Miami, should have beat Miami. You know, you see how they just don't think? They just don't really think very well. Like, they don't look at schedules. They don't look at anything, really. Nebraska should be in the top 25 at the very least. And then I've got Washington State looking in because Washington State's only loss is to Boise State. Boise State is one of the most solid teams in the country. And even then, you know, like, Washington State kind of got thrashed. Yeah, they got beat up pretty good. And I still think they should be in the top 25 because at the end of the season, Boise State's probably going to be like number 10 or like number 8. Who knows? They're going to be up there. They're going to be right up there. And Washington State right now, their only loss is to Boise State. They, in fact, had a absolute kill on Texas Tech early in the season. And Washington State also has a road win against Washington, something that even Michigan couldn't do. Yeah, you see how that works? Let's keep Michigan in the top 25, even though they're a 2-loss team. And let's not keep Washington State in, even though Michigan lost on the road to Washington, but Washington State didn't. Like, what? Where's the logic there? But Texas Tech, you know, to have Texas Tech right behind Washington State like this, even though Washington State beat Texas Tech 37-16, the situation here for me is that Texas Tech didn't have Taj Brooks, who since getting Taj Brooks back, they have been absolutely dominating. Games with Taj Brooks, dude, they are absolutely stellar. They're undefeated with Taj Brooks, actually. Yeah, they're undefeated with Taj Brooks. Games without Taj Brooks, they're 0-1. And it was against Washington State. And it was also a road game. So there's a lot of factors that played into Texas Tech losing that game, as well as, I mean, the quarterback had to throw the ball as much as possible. He threw 58 total passes. That's absolutely insane work. Texas Tech also beat themselves up with everything. I mean, give them a rematch. This game's going to change. You get Taj Brooks back. They failed 4 of their 5 fourth down conversions, as well as they turned the ball over 4 times. So they gave the ball away 8 times, as well as they had 80 yards of penalties. Texas Tech had 80 more yards than Washington State in this game, and they lost 37-16. It was just a hideous performance and a game that we should just erase from our memories because it's just going to be a bad stain on a good team. Texas Tech, given the chance back to play this team, won't blink twice. I still think Washington State might be able to pull off the win here, but Texas Tech is definitely going to make it a lot more difficult. And I mean, Texas Tech proved this by beating Arizona on the road in a game they led like almost the whole way. Arizona finally peaked over by a point in the fourth quarter. And even in this game, Taj Brooks fumbled the ball twice. He fumbled it twice. He handed them the ball twice for no reason. Like a running back that doesn't fumble, gave it away twice, and you're still winning by 6 points on the road. And that's with a fart time 54-second, 52-yard field goal that didn't amount to anything. And then you also have a 44-41 victory over Cincinnati, an absolute offensive annihilation. Texas Tech and Washington State are 2 teams that deserve to start getting some recognition. There's just the start of the year for Texas Tech. It's going to be a bad stain on a good team. Even their overtime win against Abilene Christian. You best believe Abilene Christian going into that game is going to give everything they've got. And Abilene Christian actually isn't even that bad in Texas sports right now. They're not the worst thing ever, you know? But I mean, like when you have a game like that highlighted on your schedule, for Texas Tech, like they are going to literally pull out every single move in the book they can do against Texas Tech. Ironically, Abilene Christian's only other loss other than Texas Tech right now is to the Idaho Vandals, which Idaho they lost one game to Oregon and then a 2-point loss against UC Davis. I mean, Idaho is actually performing fairly well against other opponents. So, I mean, I'm just saying these teams are teams that are getting glossed over. Whatever, I'm just yapping. That's my top 25. I hope y'all enjoyed. Like and subscribe to help a comment. Always tells us that's all for me. Adios.